Good afternoon. I'm Katelyn Adams, and today I will be representing Beaver River FFA. As Michael Pollan once said, the garden suggests there might be a place where we can meet nature halfway. With every passing day, the availability we have to meet nature halfway gets more and more difficult. Not because there's a lack of people to make that connection, but because so many of those people reside in areas with limited resources. Today, almost 94% of the American population lives in or near cities and towns, leaving only about 6% in rural areas. This drastic imbalance means that it is extremely difficult to get enough fresh produce into the heavily populated areas when there are only so many agriculturists and usable farms in the country. As the cities are left with restricted amounts of fresh fruits and vegetables, people are beginning to turn toward a practice known as urban horticulture or urban gardening. Not to be confused with a system of community gardening, urban gardening does not benefit solely one person or family. It is the practice of raising and encouraging the growth of crops in urban areas to then be sold to markets and available for consumption just like any other food. The farmers must learn to adapt their crops to suit the city atmosphere and come up with new ways to efficiently grow crops. They must be extremely creative when it comes to arranging the gardens and saving space in a way that the crops can be grown properly. Urban gardening has been around much longer than everyone chooses to believe. The art of farming in cities has been practiced for as long as people have resided in them, which can be traced back to as early as 3500 BC. At first they started out as a way to gain easy access to fresh food within the city walls, and the reasoning is still valid today. Throughout the years, the tradition stuck around, and even as larger plantations popped up in rural areas of countries, and growers began to explore more possibilities for urban gardens and how they could be beneficial to everyone. One very good example of this was during the time of World War I and World War II. While the valuable resources from each country were contributed to their soldiers and war efforts, those at home were left with little to nothing to survive off. Victory gardens became very popular contributions, and average citizens learned to cultivate their own gardens for families around them. Although the big picture of supporting crop growths in cities remains, today we are faced with yet another extremely important reason to do so: the growing population. With a world population of nearly 7.8 billion people and a growth rate of nearly 20 million people since April of 2010, the need for fresh produce is growing with every passing day. And because so many of those people reside in cities and other urban areas, it is all that more difficult to provide them with proper and affordable nutrition. Despite the vast number of sustainable farms throughout the country, it is extremely troubling to get enough of the agricultural produce to the majority of the city population. And even when that is successful, there is not enough to sustain the entirety of urban areas. This is where urban horticulture comes in handy. Allowing for agriculturists to bring the farming industry to the city means that people are not as dependent on the sustainability from rural farms and can help fight against lack of fresh produce. So now that we know practicing agriculture in urban areas is logical, we must begin to look for unique ways we can incorporate gardens into the crowded city areas. Some very large-scale methods of urban horticulture that have been extremely popular are rooftop gardens and hydroponics. Rooftop gardens can be traced back to originating in the time period around the start of farming in cities. However, people just recently began to realize the great benefits of these rooftop gardens and are turning back to them as a source of nutrition. Now, even large industries such as the Ford Motor Company are getting on board with the practice. The Ford industry turned to green roofs about 10 years ago to help reduce the chemical emissions from their factory, but they were soon found out as having the perfect setting to grow food. Rooftop gardens are ideal when you are looking to grow crops with little maintenance and save space in the process. Due to these gardens having 24/7 exposure to the sun and rain, they require very minimal watering, so you don't have to worry about them lacking adequate sunlight or water. These gardens also can be installed on just about any roof, which eliminates the trouble with having to plant vegetation around pre-existing and crowded roadways. They also give the possibility of one day having green roofs on just about every high-rise in large cities. Another practice of urban horticulture that has withstood the test of time holds the name of hydroponics. Hydroponics is a practice that does not involve any soil, only nutrient-rich water and substances like clay in which the crops are planted. Not only do hydroponics eliminate the need for soil, they also hold other advantages, such that they do not require a lot of space. This type of crop growth means that the plants can be stacked in troughs and beds, thus saving space and still getting the proper amount of nutrients needed to grow the plants. An additional advantage to hydroponics is that they can be nourished using either natural sunlight or artificial fluorescent light. The ability to grow plants without direct sunlight is a huge deal, because that ultimately means you do not need space outside for a greenhouse or other places to grow crops using hydroponics. Rather, you can use an empty building as long as you can provide the proper light and darkness for the hours the plants need it. Despite not being able to grow some crops without certain nutrients not found in hydroponics, this method of growing food is very substantial to urban agriculture. Along with the benefits of having more fresh produce to sustain our cities, urban horticulture has many other positive effects. Gardening in cities is more than just the effects on our health and the ability to supply our own food. It can also have a large impact on the economy and the species around us. Growing food in cities has such benefits to wildlife and the ability to have natural filtration systems. Practices such as green roofs can provide many places for birds and other small wildlife to reside, when before they may have been deprived of proper habitats. The plants can also aid in filtering the air we breathe and can even help cut back on the high carbon emissions that are recognized as coming from cities. As far as our health as people, they are not limited us to having the proper amount of fresh produce due to the increased availability, but in fact, seeing living gardens in person can also have a great impact on us as well. Studies have shown that by seeing something in nature that is green and flourishing, we as people can achieve a sense of calmness not usually found in the busy urban lifestyle. And last but not least, there are many economical satisfactions that come with the practice of urban horticulture. By planting large-scale gardens in cities, more jobs become available that, after some training, the average citizen can easily do. Along with that comes the ability to support small markets, ultimately leading to economic stability and the self-satisfaction that people are buying locally grown produce. Looking 5, 10, or even 20 years into the future, we have come to realize that the urban population will only continue to grow, and so will the need for more fresh produce to help sustain that growing number of people. However, this issue will not be as difficult as it once was thought to be, seeing how we have these efficient and beneficial methods to help fight the lack of sustainable produce in cities. And with people who have such a willingness to learn about the different aspects of urban horticulture, and as well as what it takes to achieve sustainability within your own city, the goal of farming in heavily populated areas become all that more manageable. As we further embark on our journey to self-sustainable cities, working together as a community will greatly increase not only our excesses with it, but also our ability to meet nature halfway. Thank you.
Question number 1. A majority of produce grown in the United States is grown in rural areas. What challenges are preventing urban agriculture from being more popular?
The big issue cutting off the practice of urban agriculture would be the limited access of land in the city. We can see that with the use of hydroponics or rooftop gardens that this issue is no longer as threatening. But as seen in a case study by the Journal of Agriculture, Food Systems, and Community Development, there are several other issues, including lack of funding from the city and lack of proper insurance to support the business. Many urban farmers face a lack of funding from the government that leaves them with no money to expand their farms or pay for the help. The reason for this is that the government does not support local growers like they do large-scale producers, and local and city growers are considered to be local producers. This challenge ultimately leads to another lack of proper insurance. By not having an adequate amount of financial support, it can be difficult to obtain insurance as well. These concepts prove to be major challenges that hopefully with some time can be solved.
Question number 2. How much would it cost a person to start a rooftop garden?
Just like anything else, the cost of a rooftop garden varies with the complexity of the system you choose to install. A very minimalistic green roof would cost around $30 per square foot, which is about 25% more than the cost of a traditional roof. And a very elaborate green roof setup would amount to about $200 per square foot. To put that into perspective, converting a roof such as my own of approximately 1,500 square feet would cost anywhere from $45,000 to $300,000, depending on the level of intricacy. Keeping in mind that this cost does not cover that of the actual crops and maintenance, a green roof can be very pricey but can have tremendous long-term outputs.
And question number 3. The United States Department of Agriculture is working on forming an advisory committee on urban agriculture. What impact do you think this will have on the future of urban agriculture?
By creating an advisory committee pertaining to urban agriculture, there will be many people who learn valuable information about the topic and its benefits. As more and more people are introduced to the idea, they will come to be on board with the practice, as well as support the growth of gardens in cities. This committee will also serve as a great place to troubleshoot and bounce around ideas to strengthen the practice and reach the goal of self-sustainable rural areas. Urban areas. Personal experience has taught me that by actually being a part of a group or committee, you can learn so many things. Not to mention, it allows you to be more involved and even spread the knowledge yourself. This is very important because anything that can be done through teaching others about urban agriculture and getting their input to improve will only help our chances of success in the future. Thank you.